Mexico grants emergency authorization for the Pfizer-BioNTech coronavirus vaccine candidate.
If we don't change
UN Secretary General sounds alarm over climate change.
More than 3 degrees this century.
And hundreds of Nigerian students missing after armed attack on a high school. Hello and welcome to teleSUR. I'm Doris Polo in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the South. The Mexican government has granted emergency authorization for the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine. This week, the government announced it would begin the vaccination process at the end of this month, with the first batch of 250,000 set to immunize 125,000 people, since the full dose requires 2 shots.
Mexico is
the fourth country whose health regulatory agency, COFEPRIS, has granted emergency use authorization to the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine against the SARS-CoV-2 virus for the prevention of COVID-19. This is certainly a reason for hope of tranquility. We are already prepared to issue the purchase order. Throughout this moment, we have been in close conversation with Pfizer, so that Pfizer grants it, and once the purchase order is made, Pfizer reconstitutes the product or conditions it for 8 days, as it's called technically, and sends it. The distribution points have been defined.
Staying in Mexico, archaeologists have excavated more sections of an extraordinary Aztec tower of human skulls under Mexico City. The country's National Institute of Anthropology and History said a further 119 skulls had been uncovered. The tower was discovered in 2015 during the restoration of a building in the capital. It is believed to be part of a skull rack from the temple to the Aztec god of the sun, war, and human sacrifice. For the first time in its history, Bolivia's civil registry has authorized a same-sex civil union following a 2-year legal battle. David Aruquipa, a 48-year-old businessman, and Guido Montano, a 45-year-old lawyer, were initially denied the right to register their union in 2018 by authorities who said the country's laws did not allow same-sex marriage. While the constitution still does not permit same-sex unions, the couple argued successfully that the prohibition violated international human rights standards and constituted discrimination under the nation's laws.
It is a historical event. We are in a WhatsApp group of more than 300 activists. At the national level, there are some representatives who are here today. But just that next step, we know that this situation, and that's why it's only a half happiness. This situation benefits us both, enables our registration, but this is not yet open to all, the gay and lesbian population. Our rights have historically been excluded. So I am 40 years old. So for 40 years, I have had to work to transform my family.
Guatemala saw another peaceful demonstration on Friday calling for the resignation of President Alejandro Giammattei, Vice President Guillermo Castillo, and other state officials. Members of at least 10 social movements, collectives, and universities held a march from the Attorney General's office, passing Congress and ending at the presidential residence. Protesters also stressed that the Interior Minister and Director of the National Civil Police should be removed from office due to their responsibility in the use of excessive force against demonstrators by police during mobilizations on November 21st. Furthermore, they demanded the resignation of all Congress members and for next year's budget to prioritize children, the youth, women, and indigenous peoples. Still in Guatemala, the indigenous community of Campur, located in the northern part of the country, remains flooded and isolated 1 month after Hurricanes Eta and Iota devastated the region and left at least 160 dead or missing.
About 700 houses that are underwater, including schools, Catholic Church, Nazarene Church, Baptist Church.
It's very hard to think that I've lost my house, because I put my sweat on it. There was my job. It's very sad that I lost my house.
Unfortunately, the water was filling up very quickly and we didn't have time to get all of our stuff out. Some people couldn't rescue almost anything. They lost everything and we couldn't ask the neighbors for help because they were evacuating.
Continuing with Latin American news, more than 4.9 million Chileans have requested a second early withdrawal of 10% from their private pension funds so far, on the second day of the process intended as a means to alleviate the economic crisis that has intensified due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This bill on the second withdrawal was approved by Congress on December 4th with the argument that the funds would help citizens to better cope with the financial strains sparked by the coronavirus. On Thursday, pension fund administrators activated the electronic platforms for the withdrawal requests to be submitted. The average amount of money withdrawn in this second process has been about $1,900. The first early withdrawal of pension funds was enacted in July of this year, and to date, more than 9 million people have opted to make use of the funds. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel announced on Thursday that the island will end its dual currency system, gradually eliminating the convertible peso to leave just the Cuban peso as of January 1st. Wages will also increase fivefold as part of the large-scale reform of salaries and pensions. The reform will see the convertible peso, which is pinned to the US dollar and was introduced in 1994 to replace the US currency, phased out over the next 6 months to leave just the regular peso. The idea is to make the Cuban economy more efficient. It comes at a time when the country is reeling from tighter sanctions imposed by the Trump administration and from the drop in tourism and remittances due to the coronavirus pandemic. The new measures, first announced in 2013 before being repeatedly delayed, come at a delicate time for the Cuban economy, which is expected to shrink by 8% this year.
When there is only one currency, the state will know how it is going to sell the merchandise so that we poor people can live.
Our country needs a change, and what better way to start than with the economy, which is a very important area, which can provide a more stable basis for new development and the new directions we want to take.
It is a great gift for all Cubans that we can start from January the 1st, and that day has been chosen precisely to begin on January the 1st.
We'll take a short break now. Join us in a few. Welcome back. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called on countries across the world to declare a state of climate emergency and commit to slash carbon pollution as they recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. He made the call during the Climate Ambition Summit held in the United Kingdom to mark 5 years since the Paris climate deal was signed.
If we don't change course, we may be headed for a catastrophic temperature rise of more than 3 degrees this century. Can anybody still deny that we are facing a dramatic emergency? That is why today I call on all leaders worldwide to declare a state of climate emergency in their countries until carbon neutrality is reached. Some 38 countries have already done so, recognizing the urgency and the stakes. I urge all others to follow.
Meanwhile, on the eve of the anniversary of the signing of the climate change agreement, the Caribbean community hosted the CARICOM Moment of Ambition, where Secretary General Owen LaRocque lamented that the region cannot afford to mitigate the catastrophic consequences of climate change, especially amidst the pandemic. As such, he said urgent measures are needed for CARICOM states to access aid for post-COVID-19 and climate recovery.
As CARICOM, we continue to advocate for policy options and urgent measures to finally address access issues in the context of COVID recovery, climate change, and development. In this regard, we urge the international community to expand the criteria for access to grant and concessionary finance and debt relief initiatives. A universal vulnerability index must be established to determine such access. It is our sincere hope that the next 5 years will be characterized by developing new financial instruments. This should include debt for climate swaps and grant-based financing for specific initiatives. Renewed attention to mobilizing partnerships with the private sector and addressing options for finance to support regional responses to loss and damage are also of importance.
On February 4th, a Jamaican judge will disclose whether former Education Minister Ruel Reid, President of the Caribbean Maritime University, Professor Fritz Pinnock, and others will go to trial for fraud. Chief Judge of the Parish Courts, Chester Crooks, made the announcement on Friday after a defense attorney urged him to dismiss the matter since the accused were arrested by officers of the Financial Investigations Division, which had no jurisdiction to do so. In October 2019, police charged Reid, his wife Sharon, and daughter Sherelle Pinnock, and Councillor Kim Brown Lawrence of the ruling Jamaica Labour Party over allegations of financial improprieties in which funds were supposedly siphoned from CMU and the Ministry of Education. They are all out on bail.
Take time out to create your action.
Hundreds of people are missing after bandits armed with assault rifles attacked a secondary school in Nigeria's northwestern Katsina state late on Friday. A senior police officer told journalists that the gunmen stormed the government science secondary school in Kankara district at about 9:40 p.m. and police at the scene returned fire, allowing some students to run to safety. He added that law enforcement is working with the military to determine the exact number of students that are missing or kidnapped in an effort to find them. Katsina, the home state of President Muhammadu Buhari, is plagued by violent bandits who often attack civilians and carry out kidnappings. War refugees from Ethiopia's besieged Tigray region have received the first consignment of aid relief. The International Committee of the Red Cross has delivered relief supplies in the capital Mekele in the past weeks. Access to Tigray has been restricted since fighting began, making it difficult to hand over aid to thousands of refugees. The relief comes as the United Nations had expressed concern over the plight of nearly 100,000 Eritrean refugees in Tigray who had appealed for urgent aid.
The worst for medical personnel, for the health staff in hospitals and primary healthcare centers, is to be unable to help, is to be unable to provide support due to lack of material, due to lack of assistance, and to lack of stocks. And that's indeed what we're trying and hoping to achieve by bringing much needed assistance into a region that saw a full lockdown since weeks now.
Thousands of displaced Mozambicans who fled the Islamist insurgency in the north of the country are faced with a serious humanitarian catastrophe due to a lack of food and poor living conditions. The International Organization for Migration has acknowledged that families living in camps in Cabo Delgado are housed in deplorable conditions, adding that humanitarian organizations are finding difficulty channeling aid to the area due to the ongoing conflict. About 500,000 people have been forced from their homes by jihadist militants who have so far killed more than 2,400 people.
Conditions are unbearable. Many people are sleeping on the floor, especially those over here. They haven't received tents, blankets, pans. They have only got food. That's it.
In terms of support, usually we have a few sectors that are regularly mentioned and are reflecting the needs on the ground. So clearly access to food, water, clean water is key, access to shelter, access to household items. These are really sectors and the support that is regularly requested by internally displaced persons.
We're taking one last break. Don't go away. Welcome back. On Friday, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected a lawsuit backed by President Donald Trump to overturn Joe Biden's election victory, ending a desperate attempt to get legal issues that state and federal judges had rejected before the nation's highest court.
decision to reject Texas's lawsuit really ends a desperate attempt to get legal issues before the court that had previously been rejected by state and federal judges. And what the import of the decision is that it really ends any possibility, however remote, that Trump and his supporters could use the courts to overturn the will of the voters in this election. The Electoral College, which meets Monday, is now on track to vote and provide Biden with a electoral majority and his formal election as the next president.
Meanwhile, U.S. President-elect Joe Biden has welcomed recommendations from U.S. experts who have granted emergency approval for Pfizer-BioNTech's COVID-19 vaccine candidate.
The FDA committee recommended emergency use authorization for Pfizer's BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine. But we're grateful for the scientists at these, not only there, but other great organizations, researchers who developed this vaccine and several others on the way. And we're just as grateful to the scientists and the public experts who evaluated its safety and efficiency free from political influence. I want to make it clear to the public, you should have confidence in this. There's no political influence. These are first-rate scientists taking their time looking at all of the elements that need to be looked at. Scientific integrity led us to this point.
Now, that said, U.S. citizens are set to start receiving the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine from Monday, according to General Gus Perna, head of the distribution operation.
145 sites across all the states to receive vaccine on Monday. Another 425 sites on Tuesday, and the final 66 sites on Wednesday, which will complete the initial delivery of the Pfizer orders for vaccine.
Staying in the U.S., a car struck several pedestrians taking part in a Black Lives Matter protest in New York City on Friday, according to police and local media. A spokesman for the New York Police Department confirmed that the vehicle struck multiple people at 4:08 p.m. local time and that those injured had been taken to various hospitals, adding that it is not thought that any of the injuries are life-threatening. According to the spokesman, it was too early to tell whether it was intentional or a traffic accident, and the driver is still in custody. The New York Police Department tweeted that updates will follow. Shifting gears now, protests against the controversial global security law have continued for the third weekend in a row in the French capital, Paris. Demonstrations erupted after the government introduced a security bill in Parliament that is meant to increase surveillance and restrict the circulation of images of police officers in the media and online. The bill has been viewed as part of President Emmanuel Macron's bid to strengthen the imposition of law and order ahead of elections scheduled for 2022. At least 6 Russian law enforcement officers were injured in the country's south on Friday when a suicide bomber blew himself up near a local office of the Federal Security Service, FSB. According to local media, an explosive device first went off outside the FSB office without hurting anyone. However, when law enforcement gathered to inspect the site, the suicide bomber approached them and detonated explosives, killing himself and injuring 6 officers. The identity of the attacker is yet to be established. Cyprus announced on Wednesday that it would close hospitality venues and shopping malls and ban church attendance over the Christmas holidays to curb a spike in coronavirus cases. The health minister announced the tighter restrictions following an emergency cabinet meeting. Rapid antigen tests throughout the country have shown that the virus is spread across every part of the nation. The new measures will be enforced from December 11th to 31st. Cyprus imposed a nationwide 8-hour nighttime curfew from 9 p.m. on November 30th, while hospitality venues were ordered to shut at 7 p.m. These measures were to expire on December 13th if the COVID-19 situation improved, but the country registered a high of 419 daily cases on Tuesday and 5 deaths, making it the deadliest day on record. Cyprus had largely kept a lid on the pandemic by introducing an early lockdown in March that was gradually eased from early May. Health authorities blame the spike on Cypriots' flouting of hygiene rules, including on mask wearing and social distancing. Indian police have stopped farmers from blocking major highways and taking over more roads leading into the capital as a two-week campaign against market reform laws intensifies. The strike follows 5 rounds of talks between farmers and the government that have failed to produce any breakthroughs. The demonstrators are protesting reforms that they say could devastate crop prices and reduce their earnings. They say the laws will lead the government to stop buying grain at the minimum guaranteed cost and result in exploitation by corporations that will push prices down.
Now, they are not allowing new farmers to join the protests. They are all being stopped along the route, wherever farmers are trying to come together in large numbers to protest. They are being blocked. This is all an attempt by the government to quash the farmer protests.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For telesur English, I am Doris Polo. Thanks for watching.